Procedural generation has always fascinated me, an idea of vast lands that weren't made by a human hand, but instead were born naturally, from rules and constraints, and of course dungeons that provide endless possibilities of adventure. Since I myself am making a game with procedural dungeons, let's look at a game by Bethesda Studios that is most known for its insane scale and procedural generation. What? Oh no, not you. I'm talking about Daggerfall. First thing though, if you have no idea how the dungeons in Daggerfall are made, this video might ruin them for you. You will start seeing patterns and they will lose the mysticity of the unknown. You have been warned. This is a map of one of Daggerfall's dungeons. It's a starting dungeon where you spawn on a new game. What instantly should draw your eye is that there are corridors which are not connected to anything. Why is that? Why would the proc gen need them? Well, dungeons are generated in a very simple process. They are made using square blocks that are placed onto a grid. The least number of blocks a dungeon can have is 5, 1 block inside, an inner block, and 4 blocks on each of its sides that are called outer blocks. Outer blocks act as caps closing the inner blocks from the outer space. Let me visualize it. This is an inner block. It's open on all 4 of its sides. This is an outer block. It closes anything it touches. Every quest object in the game has to spawn in the inner block. The most interesting content is also inside the inner blocks. Outer blocks are there only to close the space of the dungeon, so that you cannot walk outside of the game area. The entrances and exits of the blocks are designed in a way so that they can easily connect with one another. What that means is you can place one inner block next to the other and their entrances will match. And that is the key to understand Daggerfall's progeny in the dungeons. All they do is place inner blocks and then outer blocks to close them. That's basically it. And of course the important note is that the progeny is not happening anymore in your games. It has been all done in 1996 in Bethesda's offices. Let's now use this knowledge to analyze a map of a starting dungeon. On the left side of the map you can see a small cross. It indicates how many blocks are used in the dungeon. The yellow blocks are outer blocks, while the pink one is the inner block. As I have said before, we need 4 outer blocks to close one inner block. Also on the cross on the left side are marked a position of the player with red square and a position of the exit with green square. Of course, it's all nice in theory, but where can you actually see these blocks in the game? I used the same colors as on the cross on the left side to mark inner and outer blocks. All possible entrances to outer blocks are marked with blue arrows, and all possible entrances to inner blocks are marked with red arrows. Watch what happens when I move all of these blocks' entrances on top of each other. They match perfectly. And this is true for every single block in the game. Every single block in the game uses the same places for exits and entrances. This is the secret of Daggerfall's dungeons. You can put any number of blocks next to each other and their entrances will be perfectly aligned. We can also see that a lot of elements are currently not used in this dungeon, but they are disconnected from everything. Why is that? Well, that's because they were designed to be uniform, and their only goal is to close the inner block from the outside world. Every single side of the outer block is meant to close the inner block, so the outer blocks are created in a way so that you can place any outer block on any side of an inner block, and it will work just fine. And now let's see how individual blocks look. And for that I'll be using a tool called Daggerfall Modelling. I'll link it in the description below. We already know how the geometry works, but how do enemies, quest objectives and treasure spawn? What process does it follow? Taking a look at one of the blocks we can see that there are predefined spots for each of them. They create a pool from which some of them are selected and enemies spawn there. Enemies are also selected from a pool that's based on your character level and type of a dungeon. The same thing applies to treasure and objectives. You can see that knowing all spots in which quest objective can spawn can be very helpful. Instead of checking every single room, you can take the shortest path that passes through every single possible spot, and you will always find your objective. Let's now sum it up and walk through the process step by step once again. A dungeon type is selected with a pool of possible blocks. Dungeon size is selected. A single dungeon can have a maximum of 32 blocks, That includes inner blocks and outer blocks. In order for the dungeon to never exceed 32 blocks, a maximum number of inner blocks is exactly 10. It's because in a worst case scenario, when inner blocks are positioned in a straight line, then the number of outer blocks is exactly 22. Selected number of internal blocks are placed next to each other. Outer blocks are placed next to each inner block. And voila, that's your dungeon. I will now answer some questions about Daggerfall's dungeons. Keep in mind that I'm talking about Daggerfall Unity, so it might not apply to the DOS version. How does the smaller dungeon setting work? It limits dungeons to a single internal block. So every non-main quest dungeon in the game will have exactly 1 inner block and 4 outer blocks. How does the generator ensure that the quest objective is always reachable? Quest objectives can only spawn in internal blocks, not external. There are no parts of internal blocks that are unreachable to the player, and thus the quest objective is also always reachable. How do levers and teleporters work? Levers always open something within the same dungeon block, and teleports always connect you to the teleport inside the same dungeon block. Teleports are often connected so that they form a loop back to the starting teleport. That's the entire secret of Daggerfall's dungeon. If I missed something important, please let me know in the comments. As always, you can support my work on Ko-fi. I'm working on a Daggerfall-inspired game called Rift of Nosteria, and we'll be doing some devlogs soon. If that's something that interests you, subscribe to my channel. See ya soon!